I've got one of the very best in the business as well. And her co-host had an amazing time in my hometown in Las Vegas, getting all of the best scoops and, of course, kind of getting all the ins and outs of how, the Super Bowl was going to go between the Chiefs and the 49ers. So joining us, Nikki Gist. Nikki, let's just start with this, that I think that honestly, this is one for the ages for, every team in the NFL, but I also do think on broadcasting as well. Let's start with that. That had to have been an immaculate week for you guys, because the fact that Vegas knows how to put on a show, they also know how to really kind of set everything center stage. So, what was your thoughts on the entire experience? Because again, I've lived in it long enough to know we are the kind that loves to put on a show.
Yeah, so that was my first time being in Vegas. So I didn't actually and I'm so sorry, guys. I ended up with a cold. Vegas did me in, so I am sorry if I sound like a stuffed up toddler. But we had a great time, but we didn't really get to experience any fun. Not that we didn't have fun, but it's work. It looks like Vegas is really positioning themselves as like the go-to city for sports, right? And this like mecca of entertainment. And I think that's great. The stadium is great. It seems like a great city. I wish I got to experience a little bit more of it, but it's Super Bowl week. It was so crazy. Deb and I were doing like 9, 10 events a day, and you're getting in these interviews. But yeah, you guys know how to put on a show. And as an ex-dancer, I do appreciate that. So good things from the city of Vegas. But I hope next time I can maybe party a little bit and experience that side of it. So, but it was great. It was great all around.
Gosh, I know. The fact that and listen, nothing at all, but the fact, for me and my wife, we wanted to start a new life, elsewhere. And she's originally from Colorado. I really have never been I've traveled to many places, but I've never resided in anywhere else. And so, to kind of see that, yeah, it kind of bummed me out a little bit. But at the same time, there's always, different opportunities from there. So I'm excited about that. But let's get into it, because I think ultimately I watched this Chiefs team. And everybody, and it's like the usual narrative, they don't have the best wide receivers. They kind of look like this team's a little bit broken, or, they're completely out of sync. But yet everything boiled up to this point where Mahomes has not thrown a pick at all in the postseason. Andy Reid is just unbelievable as a head coach. And look, do I need to say more about Travis Kelce? This is just kind of, this is kind of the whole thing about the Chiefs. I would probably say, as I get into my segment a little later on, but I think we are witnessing that. I don't think we want to put Patrick Mahomes as the GOAT yet, but I do think he is starting to be the baby GOAT. What was your thoughts on the Super Bowl as a whole? And have we kind of just seen that the Chiefs right now is basically on every NFL team's target?
Oh, yeah. As soon as they won, I was like, they've got a target on their back forever and ever and ever, right? Everybody wants to knock off the top dog. And I've seen this, right? Like, oh, he's Brady now. No, not yet, everybody. Just calm down, right? Not yet. I'm not ready to anoint him. They're like, oh, he's the best to ever do it. And it's like, Tom Brady would like a word with you, I think, so it's just calm down. But they're a phenomenal team, and you got to give all the credit, so much credit, to Andy Reid. And what I love about Andy Reid is that he's the type of coach where, and there's those coaches in the league where you're going to fit into my box, but he doesn't do that with the talent he has, right? It's like, what do I have? How do I make this work? And I'm going to work my game plan around what I've got. And there's not, too many coaches that do it that way. I think we're moving towards that. But he's one of the best to ever do it. And oddly enough, I think when it comes to talking about great coaches, he seems to be left out of the conversation a lot. And I just think that that's interesting. So, I didn't want to see Kansas City win again. I was rooting for like the Detroit, Baltimore, right? Like the gritty, I'm not supposed to be there matchup. But Well, we got the Chiefs and we got the Niners who didn't know the rules. I mean,
Or so they say. I mean,
come on. I don't know. That's wild to me.
so this is my thought about the Chiefs because I think ultimately, I mean, yes, we are witnessing that this is a team that for this season and last year's season, this was a chance to beat the Chiefs. The Dolphins failed to do so. The Ravens, I believe, like they ran the ball once and didn't run until it was too little too late. And the fact that this Ravens team has been great all year long. I would also say Buffalo, they got many chances, but yet they still couldn't capitalize and they had to put a cape on Josh Allen's back.
Yep.
So I think, looking at this Chiefs team, it's like I kind of dissected both of them. And think about the differences between the two. Whereas you got San Francisco, you have a fully loaded roster with Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, and Debo, and a lot of it. But yet they have at least an above average quarterback.
Right.
Whereas on the other side, there's not a whole lot of talent. But however, this is the best defense that's ever been played in the Mahomes era. And you got Kelsey who's in the clutch. You've got, I would say, honestly, Isaiah Pacheco is just a hell of a runner who just expects to get tackled. And then at the same time, you have probably one of the best quarterbacks right now in Patrick Mahomes. Is it safe to say that it's, as I look at a team, it doesn't matter really what the talent that you have, but if you have the coach and you have the quarterback, anything is basically possible with a team. Is it kind of safe to say that this is kind of the strategy we've moved into with the NFL?
I think so. I said that, right? I said that, for you guys that don't know, I do cover the New York Giants, but I've said that, right? If you've got the coach, you've got the quarterback, and the coach and the quarterback are in lockstep together. And I'm not so we don't have the quarterback, but I think we've got the coach and Brian Dable. But if you've got that and they can elevate everybody around them, it almost doesn't. I can maybe go out there, right? You know what I mean? Like it almost doesn't matter. Like, yes, talent matters, but so does coaching and being able to coach up your players. And that's what your quarterback needs to do. Elevate the people around him. Does it help? He's got a Travis Kelce. Absolutely. Look at a team like Baltimore. What wide receiver? Like, what is going on there? But does it help to have a Mark Andrews? Yeah, sure. So you can have those little pieces. But I think if you've got the coach and you got the quarterback, you're winning half the battle here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, ultimately, I mean, it proves to a lot of people that it's just like, look, it doesn't matter what you throw at this team.
No.
Like you could blitz Mahomes all you want. He's going to escape out of the pocket and he's just going to get either Kelsey's open or somebody is going to be open to go and get the ball. Or you could try to eliminate his targets, but then there's an easy 15-yard run right there for Mahomes. So it's just like Mahomes is just like a human cheat code. There's nothing that you could possibly do to stop a guy like that. Now, let's move to like the Taylor Swift conversation. So people that know me on the show, and of course, Nikki knows me very, very well. But I love diversity in the sports industry. I mean, Nikki's killing it in her industry, and especially with so many different great women that are out there. I push more for this, that we need diversity in the sports industry, and I think it's making a killing. So when I hear a lot of this about, I'm not going to watch the NFL because now Taylor Swift is ruining it, I'm like, settle down. If you can't deal with this, grow up. I mean, look, listen, my wife, with her first name Cammie, she was basically named after one of the best female hockey players. Okay, so it's just like there's a history behind that. And at the same time, she's the one person that has been driving you views. She's also one person, and listen, she's not the only one as far as celebrities go that would show up at any football game. I mean, we had this with Jessica Simpson. We had this with Carrie Underwood. And this year, I thought it was great seeing Eminem in Detroit because it was just like, he's the heart and soul of it. So I think this whole narrative is, I love the fact that this drives a lot of women to watching and educating themselves up on football. Am I right?
So I'm really glad that you brought that up because one, I have women come to me all the time and they will DM me and ask me questions about football because a lot of it actually is usually it's their first time playing fantasy football. They're in a league with all men. They feel embarrassed. They don't know what to do. So I will absolutely answer their questions. And I think, what's happening with I'll call it the Taylor Swift movement. Listen, I'm a Swiftie. I love her. I've seen her in concert. She's amazing. Like, Bad Blood is my jam. So, like, I'm for it. But the fact that she's bringing over this female demographic, and now we're getting more women who are, interested in the game. And I'm seeing things like dads are saying, my daughter watched, football with me. Listen, I don't have kids, but I've got, nieces, and my niece is a Swiftie. She's 11. I know she likes football, but, she likes it even more now because Taylor Swift is there. So, hey, she's great for marketing and branding. She's bringing in this demographic of women. And what I thought was really interesting is when we were in Vegas, Jeb and I did Jen Welter's A Day in the Life of what it's like to be an NFL player, which was phenomenal. And if you guys don't follow Jen Welter, Dr. Jen Welter, I should say, excuse me, please do, because she's just an amazing person. I've gotten to know her a lot over this past year, and I'm so blessed and like grateful that she's in my life, which is wild and crazy because I've looked up to her for so long. But so she goes through this whole camp, right? And eventually you do tackling and you do drills, but she starts it off with a playbook. And she, of course, has, celebrity coaches come in. And she teaches you and she breaks it down. And I think I know the game, but this is coming from an NFL coach, right? The first female NFL coach. And she breaks it down in such a way that it's so easy to learn. And she used the Taylor Swift jokes and the Travis Kelce jokes to teach you about the X's and O's of the plays. And you could see some of the women like, oh, it starts to click. So I think, like, let's not be afraid of this. Let's embrace this. And let's not make fun of people who might not know. What if the Super Bowl was their first game? I mean, they don't know. So something that Deb and I have been doing is just kind of letting everybody know, hey, don't feel embarrassed. We'll help you. If I don't know the answer, I'll point you in Dr. Jen Welter's direction. And she's open. Like, she loves educating, I don't want to just single out women, but, women who might not know the game. So I'm glad you brought that up because I think, can we just embrace this and stop being so like petty about it? It's just so weird to me.
Yeah, it really, really is strange. And I mean, look, I can understand this on the defense as basically to me personally, when I look at this, and my wife and I had a conversation about it and she brought up a really, really good point. She's just like, here's the thing. Why are people freaking out about this? We don't know what Taylor Swift does on her off days when she's not touring. She may just be living the simple life like you and I, and then she's just kind of bored at home. And I think part of it is I don't have a problem with, the relationship between her and Travis. I think the thing of it is why it's so blown out of proportion. I mean, look, haven't you recalled the time when Tony Romo and Jessica Simpson was such a good team? I think this makes up for it. And, but at the same time, it's just like, it's none of this, I think, as far as, men reacting to all of this has anything to do with Taylor Swift. I think part of this reason is because it's the Chiefs. It's Travis Kelce. They're sick of this narrative that it's just like, it's Kansas City. Every time it's always Kansas City. It's like, not to get political, but it's like anytime we watch politics, they try to shove it in your face like so much. And I think that's part of the defense from it. But I think at the same time, I think she's great for television. I mean, the fact she had basically gotten $331 million just from media revenue alone, I think is just fantastic. And I've said it before. I was like, look, I respect my roots in my hometown, but they should honestly be grateful. Months ago, you had an F1 series that was there. Then you had the Super Bowl. So I didn't want to hear no complaining from anybody. I mean, I speak amongst the average American families who honestly wish they had a payout just as large as like what Vegas had. So that's why I'm like, just humble up, be grateful of this and move on.
Yeah.
I think this is great. I think it's great with the demographic because of the fact of, and think of it this way, the NFL is now expanding internationally. I don't think we're going to have international teams like we did years ago when we had the European League. We had, we still have the Canadian Football League, but we don't even talk about them that much.
No, we don't.
But I think the demographic change and the diversity of it is probably why it just makes the NFL just so king at what it does. When you look at broadcasts, it's like every time I change the channel, there it is. There's NFL right from there. I think it's safe to say this is like a media king for them.
Oh yeah, yeah, it is. And you know what though? I noticed the same people complaining about Taylor Swift. I mean, and I hate to say they're guys, but it's true. It's the same men who told me I shouldn't be allowed to go to the Super Bowl because it's a man's sport. And why are women allowed to go? And it's just so archaic to me. And I don't understand where some of these people come from. Get your life together. I really don't know what to tell you.
Some of them from a place that no woman has ever gone down before. Maybe somewhere up in a basement or, wherever.
There's no way any woman is getting with. So, I mean, it just screams out of their pores, but it's unfortunate, and it's just like, it's a battle we have to fight every single day. A couple of years ago, it used to get to me. I mean, now I just don't care. I'm 4 years into this, but it's like, gosh, we still have this narrative. Like, why are women this is a man's game? Well, I tell you what, I know a lot more about football than a lot of men. So, it's ignorant to me. It's just ignorant. And I wish that we could move forward maybe as society, but
it's like, let's just get rid of the whole, macho machismo mindset. I mean, think of it this way. I mean, look, I love my wife very much, but I know of who takes care of our bank account, who basically sets us straight when it comes to we need to. So there's parts of it we have to appreciate women for. Okay. It's just like sometimes we have to be put in those places. And at the same time, we help to educate exactly, our women of what exactly they don't understand of what men really do go through sometimes. But, let's talk about the 49ers because I think, I think this push in the NFC and what we're seeing right now with the up and coming draft in April is I want to see a push of superstar quarterbacks. I think we're kind of lacking that in that conference because I watched Brock Purdy and I think, honestly, he has the best football IQ, probably somewhere closer, if not better than Dak. But at the same time, this San Francisco team is loaded with a lot of offensive weapons. Now, they did kind of ripple a bit with defense because we've seen Dre Greenlaw get hurt in the middle of the game. And then at the same time, that defense was gassed. And people are also getting outraged because they felt like, well, Kyle Shanahan didn't make the right call on overtime. I'm like, well, slow down a second. You would do the same thing if you're messing with Mahomes and the Chiefs. So my takeaway of this is I don't think the 49ers were in the wrong at all of any of their decisions. I think part of this is, number one, Mahomes is unstoppable. Number two is you don't just settle for a field goal when you know that team is going to end up scoring. You want to go for the kill. So what are you waiting for? And think of it this way. You had a couple of some options that were willing to get open, and you're not that very far from the goal line. So, I mean, what was your takeaway from the 49ers, and do you think that there's some improvements that need to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you there. Like, you got to go for the kill shot, right? It's the Chiefs. I don't care if there's 3 seconds on the clock. They're going to make something happen, So, but I will say, that block kick, right? I mean, it always comes back to bite these teams in the butt. Yeah, I think, it's interesting. They probably all season, I think a lot of us were like, they are, the most complete team. But I just, they were, like you said, they were gassed too. It was like the Chiefs just absolutely wore them down. And I don't know if they were as prepared as they should have been, right? And it's funny because it's not like that game got out of hand. I predicted a low score for weeks and weeks and weeks, and people were like, well, you're crazy. And I'm like, well, these are two of the best defenses, and I don't think either team's going to come out really swinging. So I think it was maybe a combination of not being prepared, and then maybe they got to utilize their talent a little bit more. And they went away from the run a little bit, and it was just kind of okay, go back to running the CMC. What are we doing here? Because you can run on the Chiefs, you can. So it was just why aren't we doing that? So I think maybe they got away from their game plan a little bit, and they didn't have to because it wasn't the game was it wasn't 40-0 either. So probably a combination of things, and yet again they just couldn't put it all together. And then to say you don't know the rules, I don't know.
I mean, come on. Like you're getting paid millions.
We know the rules.
Understand the rules.
We know the rules.
Yeah. But I think honestly, I mean, you are right about one thing when it came to the run game, because I felt like if you didn't feed Christian McCaffrey the ball enough, you were not going to end up winning that matchup. I mean, think about it. Did we learn our lesson from the Baltimore game of why they steered away from the run game? I mean, that was their strength all season long, and then they just disappeared. I thought that was the weirdest change of events I've ever seen.
Weird.
But I think for San Francisco, I don't think this necessarily, because I saw a narrative that basically said, oh, this should be a stain in San Francisco franchise. Whoa, timeout. I think ultimately, I saw something too, that Andy Reid, in his first 4 years, did not win a Super Bowl. He went into one with the Eagles against the Patriots, but then lost. Right. Shanahan's almost in the same category where he lost in the Super Bowl twice, lost in the NFC Championship, but he's not a terrible coach. He's still young. He's smart. He can figure out the offense. And even with a loaded team like this, San Francisco's not going anywhere. Unless you've got McVay knocking on your back door, that's usually what will happen in their division. But I think arguably, the 49ers, if they had just stuck to running the ball, I think the other thing that also kind of cost them is, how are you going to stop Chris Jones? Chris Jones knows the play is coming. He's going to put pressure on Purdy. And I think at the end of it, it's not like they didn't run the right executional plays. I just think it did not go their way. And I don't think this is anything that, San Francisco should get upset about. If anything, regroup, recalibrate, and then figure out exactly how do we stop this team if we face them once again another time.
Oh, yeah, because I think we'll see a repeat again of this. I guess, really my only knock on Kyle Shanahan, I think he's a great coach, is, stick with Brock Purdy. I think sometimes you could say he has these love affairs with these quarterbacks and he loves them for a few weeks and then he quickly moves on, right? And maybe he knows they see things that we don't see. So credit to him sticking with Brock Purdy, right? You're like, who's this kid? And believing in him and, sticking through it. So I hope that they just continue to give him the tools that he needs to succeed. But, to your point, it's like the NFC is sorely lacking in good quarterback play. It's oh my God, it rips my heart out to watch how good the AFC is. And then you look at the NFC and I'm like, oh my God.
So I think about this because, since you've been covering the Giants for a very long time,
right.
And last time we talked about it we talked about the whole Daniel Jones situation. Well, I think at this point, it really has kind of come to haunt the Giants. And I think in the end, I just think, I've said this before, Daniel Jones is just basically a mirroring image of Eli Manning, but with a better arm, and he runs. That's the only thing I could sum up for Daniel Jones. But I do think this whole narrative now with, the Chargers maybe eyeballing Saquon Barkley, Saquon, I think, at the end of the day, I think he's not going to end up returning in a Giants uniform unless they kind of figure this out. But at the same time, I've talked about coaching jobs, and I mean, I know Daboll's a very smart coach, but I think all of this is done on the front office because we've seen this now. The last time we talked was they only had one winning season in 10 years.
Right.
So if they can't figure this out, and again, I don't think this is anything towards Daboll, but I think because of the front office, it makes it feel like he's on the hot seat. You got to get the Giants to win. How would you really view the Giants offseason this year? And I mean, number one, you need more weapons. You need to get at least a capable defense, maybe more in the secondary that could at the very least help the front, help the linebackers. But it's like you've got to get Daniel Jones on the same page. Otherwise, he's going to be the reason Daboll's out of here.
Yeah, it's year 3, so it's make it or break it. Unfortunately, we're here already at this point. He had one great year, his first year, one coach of the year. You're in the playoffs. You beat the Minnesota Vikings. Did not think that they were going to beat Philly. So, hey, you're happy with that. Then to go into this year, I think what everybody was confused about is what happened this year should have happened last year, and last year should have happened this year, right? So to have this complete downfall, Daniel Jones gets hurt, Tyrod Taylor, we got Tommy Cutlets in there, back to Tyrod Taylor, right? It's just a mess. The Saquon distraction, which, I remember it was the night before training camp, day one, and I was like, please wrap up this contract, because I do not want to go into training camp and every single question is about Saquon, right? And they wrapped it up for the year, but it is, you got to fix the offensive line. Bobby Johnson, they parted ways with him, so that's great. I just don't think Daniel Jones is the guy. It's like, how much more do you need to see from him? I think you've seen everything that you can. A true wide receiver would be great. Darren Waller, stay healthy, would be great. Some help in the secondary. I know that there was rumors about Brian Daboll, Wink Martindale. I'll just say this: somewhere in the middle was the truth, and I'll leave it at that. So yeah, I think it's year 3 and another losing season. But then the Giants are in this cycle of every 2 to 3 years, you're firing head coaches, and then it's like, okay, do you fire him? Do you draft a quarterback and you start with a new coach? Do you go with Daniel Jones? So it's not a great spot for them to be in, but a little bit of hope for any Giants fans out there that are listening. One thing I do know, Brian Daboll, Joe Schoen, they are in lockstep. They talk all the time. They have a great working relationship together. So I do think they'll right the ship this year. But like we started the show, you have to have a quarterback, and they don't have a quarterback.
Yeah, you've got to. And I think, at the end of it, when I look at the NFC East, this kind of feels like it's a mulligan year for the Eagles because of the fact that now you got 2 new coordinators. This is the hope that Sirianni can make up for what the mistakes were this past season. You don't go 10-1 and then all of a sudden you fall off a cliff and go 1-6 by the end of the year. And then the Cowboys, the Cowboys are like that sales guy who always gets you every year, and then it's the same old stuff, but just with a different look. And I feel happy for the Commanders with the fact that it's brand new ownership. You got a new GM and you got a new coach. So, right. Who knows? I think they may they're going to take a quarterback, but it depends on whether or not does Caleb Williams become the option to come home and he plays in a Commander's uniform. That's left to be said. But I think, looking at the Giants with their draft, with the draft look, honestly, it's going to look like it's Malik Neighbors. I've been telling it. Me personally, as a Charger fan, I'm like, look, don't jump into the conclusion of like, look, we need another receiver because of Quentin Johnston. No, slow down. You need a talented tight end because you haven't had one since Antonio Gates. Hunter Henry's been hurt, and a lot of guys have been hurt, and there's been inconsistencies in that position. So I think Malik Neighbors would be a great fit for the Giants because he's somebody that gives you size. He's somebody that gives you really good run routes, and somebody from an LSU factory. They produced really good wide receivers, even from low. Have we heard of Odell Beckham? This has been a great thing for the Giants. So your thoughts on it? Do you think Malik Neighbors would really plug in and be a superstar?
Yeah, I didn't delve too much into the draft talk. It's funny, I get asked this all the time, and my rule is I release it a week before, and I do it one time, and that's it. And I've done that for 4 years, and I know there's other content creators, I guess I'll call them that, out there just like releasing like 600 mock drafts and stuff. But yeah, I told myself I would take a break and then I'll like dive into it a little bit. But being a Chargers fan, would you want Saquon Barkley?
Honestly, he's a good pickup as long as I know my offensive line is staying healthy. That will give him the guarantee. But here's the other thing that's the uncertainty is Austin Eckler. Does he come back? Because all of a sudden, once Jim Harbaugh got hired, he's just like, oh no, I want to come back, but I want to be in a reasonable I'm like, dude, how could you just change heart every time when it's just like you weren't happy with the contract? You then made a movement for all running backs that like they're not paid like they should. So it's like, what are we really doing here? So I think really it's depending on what happens with Austin Eckler. So if it becomes the point that he moves on, Jim Harbaugh loves his runners, and I honestly do think that he looks at Saquon like he's a leader, he's a runner, and he's a guy that, look, you plug me into an offense, I'm going to make sure I'll give you the yards. But the other thing that I've always said, too, is don't forget he's got a really, really good component that he's trusted for a very long time in Michigan, and that's Blake Corum. So even if you bring in Saquon, I would love for them to bring in Blake Corum because he gives you the attitude, he gives you the run, and he gives you the juice of what the culture really, really needs. So that's my thought on it with the whole Saquon thing.
Yeah, I don't think Saquon's going to be in New York. I've said this since, the summertime. They just could never get to, they were always so far apart on everything, right? So listen, hey, go use your talents elsewhere. Go win a championship. I feel like he's kind of being wasted in New York because they can't get it together. But I'll say this about Saquon, and if you are lucky enough to get him, he's fantastic in the locker room. And we talked about this last night in my Giants podcast. I think sometimes the element of having great leadership in the locker room is so undervalued, and it's not talked about a lot. But you need that, right? You can't have a dysfunctional locker room because then that shows on the field. So he's a very well respected leader, and he would be a great addition. Of course, I don't want to see him go as a fan, but you do this long enough, you cover the teams, a little bit of your fandom kind of doesn't go away. You just change a little bit. But hey, you know what? I think he'll be a great addition wherever he goes. I think it'll take a miracle if they actually come to an agreement. The way it's been going, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how the Giants offseason really does kind of pan out because, again, I mean, Saquon was giving you nuggets of basically saying, like, look, man, I mean, we've got the head coach. We've got the guy, but it was just like I was the one who basically put in the work. I mean, think about it. The year that Dable's first year, he got Saquon to where he was healthy on the field. Yeah. And then he was able to get Daniel Jones to where he needed to be. And part of that reason, he ended up getting that extension. And so it's just like, it's kind of to me, I think it's kind of a backstab for Saquon with the fact that you pay Daniel Jones over him and then come to find out, look at this collapse, this past season. And so there's a lot really to kind of outlook for the Giants. But I think the last thing I will say before letting you go is, I do think that the NFC, like as a whole, they're going to need more talents, as far as superstar quarterback. And I mean, we're lucky enough to get at least potentially 5, 6 of them because I do think, and this always happens. I think of this like the 2020 draft. You had 5 really good quarterbacks, and there's usually always one who ends up a bust. So I think, and I'm not sure if you dove into this a lot with as far as the quarterback play, but if you were to basically evaluate it from Caleb Williams to Drake May, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, and Jaden Daniels, I think if any of these NFC teams, like I look at the Falcons, I look at, potentially, if the Giants do end up drafting a quarterback, I don't think they'll do it this year, but maybe next year because I look at Dylan Gabriel in college. But I think that if you were to look at some of these quarterbacks, I mean, this is kind of the push that you would hope for the NFC, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, they need it. It's like the AFC is like on a super send here, and then you just got the NFC like trailing behind. I mean, it's just I think Chicago ends up taking court. What do they end up doing? It's just it's interesting, but it feels like NFC is just it doesn't feel like it. They are sorely lacking when it comes to talent. They've got to like level the playing field here a little bit. So that would be exciting to see. But everybody take it easy on the rookies too, because I think there's this like, we expect them to just come in and win us a championship. And not everybody's Pat Mahomes. Doesn't always work like that. You look at Jordan Love, right? How long did he sit behind Aaron Rodgers? 3 years?
Yep.
Like that?
About 3-4 years, just about the same as Aaron sat with Brett Favre. And then, what's so funny about that is that you're talking about a stable organization that they're not in a rush to, get these quarterbacks out there.
No.
They're building the best way, and now the future is so bright for that. So I'm sure that may be something that the Giants front office could really learn from that because, again, I mean, the whole Dave Gettleman situation, I mean, we all kind of knew where that went downhill. But at the same time, the Mara family have to understand, like, you don't want to turn this into like this is a Tom Coughlin curse. You want to be able to make up for this because at the same time, you got a great coach. Just build stuff around him so that this team can be relevant again.
Oh, believe me, nobody wants that more than me. I'm sitting here watching the Super Bowl and I'm like, I want that to be my team, right? Or I just want to see good football. And I want to see progress and improvement. And I think if you can at least see that with your team, whoever you root for, that gives you like a little bit of something. It's when every game is just this like, I knew it with opening day against the Cowboys 40-0. And I was like, okay, it's going to be like that. It's just a disaster. It's never just a bad game. It is just an epic disaster all around. So yeah, I'm watching the Super Bowl and I'm like, gosh, like, what's it like to have a full, complete team? It must be nice. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you taking the time here, Nikki. Always so good having you up on here. And guys, just know this. This is a very, very strong woman who knows her football. She knows what she's talking about when it comes to the Giants. So, again, I give her kudos. I absolutely love it. She's a rock star in this industry, along with many, many women that are out there. I push for this all the time. Appreciate the time. Where can people find you? Because we know the Blonde Blitz, they've been blitzing hella crazy, especially during Super Bowl week.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And always love coming on. Sometimes guest spots are hard, but I got my favorites that I like to do, and it's definitely one of them. You guys can find me at NikkiNick9384, Twitter, Instagram, and you can follow the Blonde Blitz on Instagram as well. We are live every Wednesday at 8 o'clock, and my Giants podcast is live every Monday at 8:30, and that's on the That Sports Podcast Network. So Deb and I will be live tomorrow night, kind of recapping our hectic week.
Oh, man. And you know what's great about that is because I even talked to Deb, and we've got at least our stuff scheduled up for Friday. So I'm so glad to have at least both of them, like from you and her.
Yeah.
Very, very glad to have you guys at least this week. So this definitely is worth it for all the content. So appreciate you guys and the great work you guys have been doing lately. It was a great experience for you guys. I know it was pretty hectic because it was business and all that, but at least you enjoyed the most of it while you guys were there. Hey, hopefully next year when we're in New Orleans, we might cross each other's paths, but hopefully I'll be able to be up out there next season.
Yeah, we'll be there out next year. I'm hoping the Giants will be there. That would be great, but we'll see.
I got to get my boys up in there at some point.
I know.
Jim Harbaugh's got to. He had a long look at that Chiefs team and said, I need to disrupt this.
Yes.
Same way he did it against Ohio State. This is the time to really do so.
And he's the guy to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, appreciate you, Nikki. Definitely rest up, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Hey there, everyone. Thanks for watching. Make sure that you guys like, follow, and subscribe to get the latest from the show. Also, go check out a few of our coolest segments that we've had from previous shows. And also make sure that you stay up to date on the show on all platforms, wherever you guys find your podcasts.